Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is Israel Wake Up. It's our Women's Advanced Bible Study night, uh, Thursday, September the 25th. Okay. We'll be reading out of the Apocrypha. We'll be reading the book of the story of Susanna. We're going to read that and break it down and put it in context with our history, what happened, what actually happened in the scripture. Okay. You can go to our YouTube channel, to Israel Wake Up, check out our videos. We have, I think, 65 or so videos that you can look at, examine, get the meat out. These videos will lead you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. Okay, and if you like what you're hearing and receiving, I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. We have our cash app at the bottom of the screen for those that want to support the channel, help you move along. Okay. This is a non-Messianic channel for those that don't know. And by that, I mean we deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. Tanakh being the Old Testament, so-called book of remembrance, and the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses by our Savior, our Redeemer, our Deliverer, the Lord of hosts. This channel was created to aid and assist all Hebrews who are waking up in these last days to their true identity, and also understanding who their Savior and their Redeemer, their Deliverer truly is. Shalom and welcome to the channel. Welcome to our Women's Advanced Bible Study. We're going to do our normal, which is a moment of silence, prayer, Psalms. We have our Women's Health Moment with Michelle, current events, need to know information. We'll open it up to anybody with questions, comments, dialogue, or testimony. Then we go into our topic for discussion, which is I put a video out on Facebook, so I was hoping everybody got it. We're gonna play that and we're gonna break that down, rightly divide it. And like I said, our scripture for scripture reading will be out of the Apocrypha, the story of Susanna, right? Then we'll pick a scripture like we normally do. We'll read that scripture and then we'll break it down, rightly divide it. Then we'll close out. Okay? It's a moment of silence for the Lord of hosts and all that He's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Lord, we thank you for your great mercy and your great power and your wisdom. And we tarry waiting for your powerful deliverance of the people of Israel. Oh Lord, you have given us insight into the scriptures of our forefathers. And you, oh Lord, have directed us to who you are and your role in the goings on of heaven and earth. Okay. Oh Lord, you spoke through your prophet Isaiah. You said that you would help Abraham's seed, and that you have scattered. And you have completed that promise as of this day. You said, oh Lord, that you would remove the darkness from around us. Tarry not, O Lord. The latter days are here, and we are waiting and watching for you, O Lord. Peace be unto you. Okay. With that being said, I'm gonna read a Psalms. Okay. I'll read the Psalms right quick. I'll read Psalm 10. It's an overthrow of the wicked. Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? The wicked in his pride doeth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blessed the covetousness whom the Lord abhorred. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. So this is one of those things I was talking about. And David is shining the light on it right here. He says the wicked, through the pride, his DNA of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. His ways are always grievous. Thy judgments are far above out of his sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. He has said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity. His mouth is full of curses and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. He sitteth in the lurking places of the villages, in the secret places. Both he uh, doeth he murder the innocent. His eyes are privy set against the poor. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den, and he lieth in wait to catch the poor, and doeth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net. He croucheth and humbleth himself that the poor may fall by his strong ones. He hath said in his heart, God hath forgotten. He hideth his face. He will never see it. Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up thine hand. Forget not the humble, wherewith doeth the wicked condemn God, contempt God. He hath said in his heart, thou wilt not requite it. Thou hast seen it, and thou holdest mischief and spite to requite it with thy hand. The poor committeth himself unto thee. Thou art the helper of the fatherless. Break thou the hand of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness till thou find none. The Lord is king forever and ever. The heathens are perished out of his land. Lord, thou hast heard the desires of the humble. Thou wilt prepare their heart, and thou wilt cause thine ear to hear, to judge the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may no more be oppressed. Okay, that was Psalm 10. Okay, I got a couple of precepts I want to go to. It says, uh, when you go to Antioch Epiphanes, right, and you don't know who that is, he was the Antichrist that came. And one of the things that it said, one of the signs was that he was going to, through peace, right, he's going to destroy many. And so one of those examples is like right here is what the wicked do, right? It says, I'm gonna start at verse 9 till I get to it. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doeth catch them when he draweth them into his net. He croucheth, now here you go right here. He croucheth and humbleth himself. So he pretending to be meek in order to draw you into his net. He croucheth, humbling himself, and that the poor may fall by his strong ones. He hath said in his heart, God hath forgotten. He hideth his face. He will never see it. Excuse me. Sorry, one more. Let me see. I'm gonna start at 15. It says, break thou the arm of the wicked and the evil man. Seek out his wickedness till thou find none. The Lord is king forever. Of the heathens are perished out of his land. The Lord, thou hast heard, okay, Lord, thou hast heard the desires of the humble. Thou wilt prepare thy heart. Thou wilt cause thy ear to hear. The judge of the fatherless, that's not it. I wanted to shine a light on this because it was yeah, 12. Arise, O Lord. So I want to show you how it's another example of that the Lord is not Yahweh. It says, O Lord, O God, God Israel, lift up thy hand, right? Forget not thy humble. So what is he talking about? Go to Deuteronomy right quick. Deuteronomy 32. I'm always going here to this verse, these verses. 32 says, 37, Deuteronomy 32 and 37, and he shall say, where are thy gods, their rock in whom they trusted? which did eat the fat of their sacrifices and drink the wine of their drink offerings, let them rise up and help you and be your protection. Then this is the Lord of hosts right here. See now that I, even I am he. There is no God with me. I kill, I make alive, I wound, and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hands. Now here you go, right here, 40. For I lift up my hand to heaven. It's the Lord of hosts. I lift up my hands to heaven. This can't be Yahweh. Yahweh in heaven. So whoever this is on the earth. He says, I lift up my hands to heaven, and I say, I live forever. If I, with my glistening sword in my hand, take hold of judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies, and I will reward them that them that hate me. So we see right here, he lifted up his right hand. And that's what David is telling us over in the Psalms. He says, he asked the Lord to lift up his right hand and bring forth judgment. So we see who that is. Okay. Anybody got any comments on that? Okay. Everybody good? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go to our current events and we'll play them and then we'll break them down. Okay. We go to the first one.
Now to another developing story that we are tracking, the increasing likelihood of a government shutdown in the next few days. The White House now threatening mass firings of federal workers if the government shuts down, with funding set to lapse in less than a week and Congress deadlocked on a way forward. According to a memo obtained by NBC News, the White House's Office of Management and Budget is asking federal agencies to prepare for a, quote, reduction in force, indicating it's prepared to go beyond traditional furloughing of non-essential personnel during a shutdown and instead fire federal employees. Top Democrats in Congress slamming the threat. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calling it an attempt at intimidation. And House Democratic Leader Jeffries called OMB Director Ross Vogt a, quote, malignant political hack. Speaking in the Oval Office today, the president blamed Democrats for a potential shutdown, calling their demands unreasonable. Democratic congressional leaders were supposed to meet with President Trump today, but he canceled that meeting. The message from the White House in lockstep with top Republican leaders on Capitol Hill.
The president draws his own conclusions, but what I would suggest, and I think the president came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be a productive meeting. The Democrats' requests are completely unhinged and unreasonable and unserious. And if they want to have a serious conversation, I think that, I'm sure the president would be welcome or would be happy to do that. But at least right now, what they're asking for to keep the government open for 7 weeks is over $1 trillion in new spending and all kinds of policy riders that never go on continuing resolutions.
Now, Democrats, meanwhile, are accusing the president of running away from negotiations. Here was House Minority Leader Jeffries earlier today.
Republicans have decided they don't want to even have a conversation with Democrats to reach a bipartisan agreement. If Donald Trump really believed that he had a strong position here, then why'd you back out of the meeting, bro? Why? I don't understand. Let's have this debate in front of the American people.
Now, notably, it was this exact scenario, firing employees and cuts to the federal workforce, that pushed Senator Schumer to vote with Republicans 6 months ago to advance a stopgap funding bill and avoid a shutdown, despite fierce blowback from some in his own party. At the time, Leader Schumer warned Democrats that the president would use a shutdown to amass more power over the government by firing workers. Now, Senate Minority Leader explaining why he believes circumstances have changed.
Three things are different. One, we've seen how bad, and the American people have seen how bad Trump's policies are. Second, they have shown that they're willing to go around the law if we don't stop them from that. And they've had these rescissions, they've had these impoundments, and they've just illegally, in certain ways, not funded the government, and that's even without a shutdown. And third, we Democrats are united now. We are totally united in saying we want to sit down, we want to negotiate. We're not going to get everything we want. They're not going to get everything they want. But to help deal with the chaos in healthcare caused by this big, so-called beautiful bill.
Joining me now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, and also with me from Capitol Hill is NBC's Mel Zanona. Thanks to both of you for being here as we count down the minutes to a potential shutdown. Gabe, let me start with you. This threat from the federal government to fire workers if this shutdown does in fact happen. Who is most at risk, and how serious is the White House, Gabe?
Oh, the White House is very serious, Kristen. And before I get to that, I just want to point out that Senator Schumer, in that interview, just played, said that Democrats are united now, implying that they were not united before. And so the White House really is taking this fight to the Democrats. We played earlier today, President Trump using that language, blaming Democrats for this impending shutdown. And at this point, Kristen, it does appear that we're heading in that direction because there's no meeting in the books. And from my conversations with White House officials, unless the Democrats back off and they want more than $1 trillion in spending, according to Senator Thune, unless they back off on that in some way, President Trump does not plan to meet with them. So there's jobs most at risk. You're right. Usually it's non-essential workers during government shutdowns that are affected. In this case, according to that memo, it is also workers that are involved, that programs that don't are not consistent with the president's priorities. Sorry, I was looking through my notes there, Kristen. But this opens up the possibility that many of these programs might be gutted, not just for the length of the shutdown, but permanently.
Well, now let me head over to you on Capitol Hill, because as Gabe is pointing out, look, this was really the crux of Schumer's argument the last time that he had a fight over government spending, saying, I'm not government, because it will be a green light to President Trump, to Elon Musk at the time, to basically fire a whole bunch of federal workers. Now President Trump is basically saying, yep, that's exactly what he's going to do. From your vantage point, based on your conversation with sources, do you think Leader Schumer is going to back down now?
Well, I can tell you that at least among Republicans, there is a growing belief that Democrats and Schumer are ultimately going to cave, especially after this new threat of mass layoffs for the federal workforce in the event of a shutdown. But so far, Democrats are not backing down. And in fact, they're digging in even harder. Multiple congressional Democrats came out today, including the leadership, and slammed this memo from the budget director as a, quote, intimidation tactic designed to bully them into folding. And they insisted they would not do that. They would continue to stand up and that this wasn't going to change their calculation. But no doubt, this new memo certainly raises the stakes dramatically ahead of the shutdown next week. The federal workforce was already reeling. They were decimated and demoralized from those DOGE cuts. So a shutdown without paychecks on top of additional layoffs would be a disaster. And as you mentioned, Schumer's reasoning for helping Republicans keep the government open earlier this year was that Trump and the OMB director were going to make a shutdown as politically painful as possible. But at least as of now, Democrats are pretty confident that Republicans will be to blame for that political pain.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments on that? Anybody heard anything about it? Stan.
Shalom, everyone. Far as the shutdown goes, that not only that people will be losing jobs, but most of states will be collapsing because they are already on the verge of collapse. And then once they shut down and Trump start firing people, it's going to take a moment to find out how many people is getting fired. He might not just go with the people in the government. He may go other places and fire people or get companies to shut down. So it's going to affect a lot of, not just the people in Congress, but it's going to affect a lot of states.
Okay. Anybody else?
Shalom, everyone. This looks like a turn of events because just recently, like 3 weeks ago, there was hiring of the government, and now it's turned around in saying firing of the government. Shalom.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, yeah. So I was listening to the video. They have an assumption that the Democrats are going to back down. I don't see them backing down. I think they're going to shut the government down. That's what I think. We know those Republicans, brothers, they're not giving no ground. Okay, here we go.
Threats against us here in the United States have never been higher, and millions of Americans need to be prepared. Look at this. It says Secret Service dismantles telecommunications threat near the UN General Assembly in New York. This happened just a few days ago. That's concerning. Well, then this happened. It says Dallas ICE gunman's handwritten note threatened real terror. Because what happened? Well, Dallas ICE shooter was targeting agents, not the detainees. That was according to multiple officials. Well, yeah, that's concerning. And then we got this guy. It says Texas man charged with terroristic threat against a Charlie Kirk vigil. Right now, the threats against the American people have never been more severe. Even when the United States was backing Israel in that fight between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, again, we were being attacked. We were being told to be careful. Russia was a threat. China was a threat. Iran, a threat. Right now, we're being told this is the highest threat level we have seen in recent years. I want to read something to you, though. This right here, okay? The Secret Service dismantling this telecommunications threat, you see it right here, where more than 100,000 SIM cards were stored about 35 miles outside of New York. And I talked about this the other day. This was on the same day the UN General Assembly was getting together, okay? Where leaders of countries were coming together. That was a massive concern. But again, the NYPD, FBI, they were able to pretty much uncover this and shut it down. That's the good news. The bad news is they are already expecting there's more of these out there. Maybe not just in New York City. Maybe on the West Coast as well. We don't know. That's the concern. But then look at this, okay? I want to read this to you. It says Dallas ICE gunman's handwritten note threatened real terror for the FBI. It says FBI Director Kash Patel says the suspect searched for videos of Charlie Kirk's assassination. The concern that people have right now is that there are other people trying to do harm, that think they're trying to solve a problem and they're doing it through violence. And that's where we are going to be hurt. I want to read this to you. It says the gunman who opened fire at a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Dallas, Texas, sought real terror for agents and search apps that track the presence of ICE personnel. According to reports, now this guy did shoot and took the life of one detainee, injured two others. But according to the reports, they are saying that this guy was not targeting the detainees. He was targeting the agents. That's what was happening. And again, this puts law enforcement in more danger than ever before. This puts FBI agents in danger. ICE agents, obviously, they're in the crosshairs right now. But the concern is that we are going to see more violence before things get better. Yeah. I want to keep reading this to you, though. Look at this. It says right here, it seems that he did not intend to kill the detainees or harm them. It's clear from these notes that he was targeting ICE agents and ICE personnel, calling it tragic irony that detainees, not agents, were shot. Okay.
Okay, any comments on that? Okay, we'll go to our need to know information. And This is about, I thought it was pretty interesting. The big trees that they've been seeing all over the world, these big tree trunks. We want to play that and then get some feedback from it. Let me get it right quick.
So, here to argue whether giant trees did exist or didn't exist, I think most of you can make up your own minds about that. So, for entertainment purposes and for the sake of this presentation, let's just pretend that they did exist. Let's consider the hypothesis and ask the question, okay, if these structures were giant trees, why do they look like they were cut down? Now, ordinarily, you wouldn't ask that question until you were able to prove that they were giant trees to begin with. But let's just say that they were and see if what I'm about to present makes any sense. Now, take a moment to consider the magnitude of such trees. A single tree that dwarfs the tallest redwood today would have been so massive that a person could walk through its trunk like a cathedral. Entire civilizations might have lived under its canopy or even climbed its branches. These weren't ordinary trees, they were cosmic structures, living monuments that connected the earth to the sky. And yet, when you look at the landscapes today, the flat-topped mesas, or the enormous stumps, the petrified logs, it's clear something changed for a reason. The idea that these giant trees of the antediluvian world were intentionally cut down opens the door to a far stranger possibility, one that would connect these ancient forests to legends of beings so massive and powerful, they might have needed these trees as a means to survive. You see, what would be the reason to cut them down? Who or what stood to gain from their removal? This is where history, myth, and mystery begin to connect. And the story of the giant trees becomes far more than just a tale of the natural world. Perhaps a reminder that in the end, there is no escaping judgment. When you look at certain landscapes, flat-top mesas, towering buttes, or column-like formations like Devil's Tower, it's easy to assume you're just seeing the work of erosion over millions of years. The idea is, over time, through a combination of mineralization and catastrophic events, the organic matter of these trees turned to stone, leaving behind stumps and columns that we now interpret as purely geological formations. Geologically speaking, a mesa is a type of landform that looks like a flat-topped hill or small plateau with steep, often cliff-like sides. The word mesa actually comes from Spanish meaning table, because they look like giant tables rising above the landscape. There are several types of mesas, and there are several elements to the geological explanation. But the main idea is that you have layers of rock, isolation, and erosion leaving behind the mesa. Now, the geological explanation for mesas make sense on paper, but when you really scrutinize it, a few flaws or at least unanswered gaps start to show up. First, many of them have this uniform flatness. Erosion is usually messy, uneven, and unpredictable. But many mesas and buttes around the world are strikingly flat, almost like they were sliced off with precision. If erosion were the only factor, you'd expect more jagged, inconsistent tops rather than broad, level tabletops. And you do have that in some instances. Second is the scale and distribution. Some of these formations are massive and isolated, rising straight up from the surrounding land. Geologists say these are the remains of larger plateaus, but the question remains, why do so many look almost identical across many different regions of the world? It seems oddly consistent for random erosion processes. Third, if these formations are millions of years old, erosion should have worn them down far more drastically, especially in harsh climates like deserts where wind and sand constantly blast the rock. Their persistence and symmetry over such long time scales raises questions about whether erosion alone is enough to explain them. So now when we look at the ancient tree theory, there's another layer to this when you start looking at myths and legends from cultures around the world. Many of these stories speak of a world tree, a cosmic entity that literally connected heaven, earth, and the underworld. In Norse mythology, Yggdrasil is described as a massive ash tree whose roots reach into the depths of the underworld, while its branches hold up the heavens. When we start talking about giant trees, it's hard not to think about the beings that might have lived alongside them. And that brings us to the Nephilim. Not only that, but we know there is evidence of giant animals and insects as well. Now, here's the thing. Imagine a world where the trees themselves were as massive as mountains. It's easy to see why some theorists suggest a connection. What if these enormous trees were something the Nephilim could interact with in a practical sense? They could climb them with ease, use them as vantage points, or even hollow them out to create living spaces. A tree of that size would provide shelter, storage, protection, almost like a natural ark rising above the floods, a sanctuary for beings of their size. The theory goes further. Some suggest that these giants may have used the trees strategically when the floodwaters came. Instead of seeking refuge in simple rafts or boats, they could have utilized the tallest, sturdiest trees as survival mechanisms, using their strength to modify the trunks and branches to suit their needs. So, what if the falling of these trees was a deliberate act to prevent the Nephilim from surviving the flood? The biblical narrative focuses on the destruction of humanity and the giants, but maybe divine intervention went even further. By removing the very structures that giants could have used as arks or safe havens, their chances of survival were erased completely. In this scenario, the trees weren't just trees, they were lifelines, and cutting them down was part of the plan. So, who would cut them down? The angels of heaven, maybe? In several ancient texts, there are references to giant trees that touch the sky. The best example is probably in the Epic of Gilgamesh in Tablet 5. As Gilgamesh and Enkidu phase from Baba in the cedar forest, the battle is more than what it seems. This is more like a cosmic battle. During the fight, Enkidu urges Gilgamesh to strike harder, warning that their actions are tied to a powerful, almost cataclysmic force. If they were, in fact, trees, could they have been deliberately cut down to prevent giants from reaching above the floodwaters, to erase knowledge, or to enforce a cosmic judgment? The evidence is buried in the earth, in the petrified stumps in the shape of the mesas, leaving us with questions that may never be fully answered. All that remains are these witnesses, monuments to a forgotten battle in a world that once was. And they once stood in the landscape as reminders of a history that is part natural, part divine, and still a mystery.
Okay. Feedback on that? Anybody heard anything about this? What you think?
Shalom, everyone. I know I've heard of the redwood trees in California and how big they are. And then, as far as him speaking on the stumps, before he mentioned the flooding, I thought about that also. That the giants, the Nephilims, had to, because it's cut down. They say precisely, straight across, no hacking and what have you. Then to me, it's what kind of tool they had to use to make sure it was cut straight across. I mean, if you use an axe, it's going to have some problems. But if, so it's just amazing that those trees that are that wide and big, I tried looking up on the internet as he was speaking, it is among us, it's like mountains. And as they count the rings, they can tell how old it is if there's a possibility for them to do so.
Right. Look at crazy part about this is Jack and the Beanstalk. And you go look at the narrative in that story. These giants was in a place in heaven, between heaven. They say the story is that these giants exist in a place between heaven and earth, and they had came down and they had caused a bunch of havoc, but they end up getting isolated up in this world between heaven and earth, and then the bees. They planted those beans, and the tree grew again, and the tree reached all the way up to where they was at, and they can't come down the tree. So the thing is that in order to get rid of them, they had to cut the tree down. So that's kind of, ironic to me, the way that story goes. So it's right there. A lot of it is right there in our face when you're looking at it. And another one is Avatar. If anybody's seen the movie Avatar, there were giant trees in that movie. Those avatars were giants, and they not only were they giants, but they lived inside these trees on the movie. Okay. Anybody else?
Shalom. There's also stories about the redwood forest and that giant tree where sacrifices are made with those who, deemed to be the evil forces and all, that they go to that big tree and make sacrifices. Shalom.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So it's something to be researched. I mean, it's something to be researched to find out more about, and then the evidence, the images that it got in the places where it looks just like a tree trunk. I mean, really ain't no explanation for it, but other than it's got to be a giant tree at one time before it was cut down. So with that being said, I'm gonna open it up for some Q&A. Anybody have any questions, comments, any dialogue, testimony? Now is the time.
Shalom, everyone. Brother Leonard, I had a question. Have you seen And I'm saying the year, but I know there's many old maps of the continent of Africa. Have you seen the map made in 1375 with Ammon in it? And I was just, if you had seen it, what your thoughts are on that map.
What's inside of it?
Ammon. It's labeled Ammon right next to the west side of Egypt, as in Ammonites.
Okay. So what's the story on that?
I was watching so they did the let me backtrack. The video itself did not speak specifically about that. It was in general talking about how Africa, the continent, had a different map, and the person in the YouTube video was showing multiple different maps, and his main thing was the Sahara, how all of these maps from like 13 whenever, 14 whenever, 1500 whenever had bodies of water that just nobody could imagine being there. However, the map in 1375 had an area right next door to Egypt on the west side of Egypt that was called AMMON. And that's the first time I've ever seen on any map of Africa a nation or a land that's actually in the Bible, but not next to what we call today Israel. So I was just wondering if you had seen that map or knew about it.
Right. I saw the map. I saw the guy, but to me, it's representing to Atlantis. And when you look at what you're saying it's at, it's out in the Mediterranean, and it's near. Well, they say Cyprus. Cyprus is the same thing. They're saying Cyprus was Atlantis. It was sunk by the gods, by the Lord of Hosts. But yeah, they say that it's not no longer exists anymore. But at one point, it was Cyprus. It was out in the ocean, and then they got these maps where they're showing even today. It's a place over in or like a ruins in over in that by the Sahara Desert, and they saying that those ruins are tied to the reason that Sahara ended up the way that it did. And so yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and even with the people that's in, they're saying that those people came from that same place, the ones that actually set up Egypt. They actually came from that place. When it was destroyed, the remnants that from there ended up in Africa, ended up in Egypt. They the ones set the civilization or the Egyptian civilization up. But it all goes. And Pangea, you ever heard of that?
Yes, sir. I've heard of Pangea.
Pangea,
The
yeah. It's all it's one
idea
part,
that all the land was put together in one big piece.
right? And then after Pangea was broken up, is that where you get Atlantis? Because after Pangea was broken up, right? So yeah. And then, like I say, when you start doing the research on it, some of it make sense, and then you gotta really dig, get some information, even try to even connect some of the dots. But yeah, anybody else got anything? Okay, we play this right here, and then we'll go into our lesson. Like I said, I'll be reading out of. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and play topic for discussion. It's I put the video on Facebook and Messenger, so I don't know if anybody watching it now, but I'm gonna play it right here, and then we'll talk about it. Thought it was pretty interesting.
When I did the video talking about the biggest reset of generations, right? Of like 300 years, that type of energy.
Genetics.
When I was speaking about the Kali Naga, right? That type of energy, that is the energy that I'm on tonight. I literally just spoke to my daughters and just broke everything down to them, just like I did back in March. I know what the title says. I know what the description says. When I tell you like about an hour, 2 hours ago, and this always happens, Spirit was like, nah, look at this picture, look at this situation, look what's going on. And when I tell you the information, when I say follow your promptings, I hope y'all are doing it. I know they may sound weird, they may feel weird sometimes, like, why am I doing this thing? Do it anyway. Follow that resonance within you. You hear me? Because on Wednesday, was it Wednesday or Tuesday? I followed this resonance within me. It led to all of this, y'all. So let me say this. What are we going to talk about tonight? It's a lot. A lot. We're going to talk about genetics, DNA, your gifts, your spiritual gifts. Like, we're going to go deep. But I'm going to back it up with history. So I'm going to give you a history lesson, give you some science. This is not all stuff I got from a book. This is stuff that I lived, y'all. I was there. I witnessed with my own eyes, with my own body. Okay? And Spirit brought all of this back to me because of something that happened on Wednesday. So we're going to take our time with this. I'm going to take my time because there's so much that I want to share. It's things I'm going to share with you that you...
So my reasoning for playing this is, like I said before, when you have a solid foundation, right knowledge, then a lot of the things that come your way, you can rightly divide them and put them in the right perspective where they're supposed to be at, rather than getting sucked in and caught up with them. So we're gonna check this out.
You have not heard before, okay? There's some things I'm going to share that's going to upset whoever. I don't know, whatever powers, so-called powers, whatever. I really don't care. You need to know this. I meditated before and I asked my spirit team, like, should I share this or should I stick with what I was going to talk about, right? Because I was going to talk about the cycles that we're in, this equinox. And spirit was like, nah, that's not it. You have to expose this. Because spiritual beings need to be activated, period. Period. This has to happen. And activation happens when there's knowing that creates a resonance within your DNA. We're going to talk about DNA, y'all, okay? So welcome to everyone that is here. I'm so happy that you all are here today, tonight. I'm making sure that I'm recording this because I'm gonna say some of those trigger words that you should not say because of the algorithms, just because I'm gonna be flowing and just because I don't care. But I am recording this video just in case. Like many of my other videos were removed because of medical misinformation or I'm spreading whatever. But everything that I'm saying to you is backed up. It is backed up. One of my prayers always is, I only want to speak in truth. If it's not truth, then what is the point? What is the purpose? And so many times when I'm sharing with you, I'm going to give you the science because you can't dispute the numbers. You can't dispute the science. Do you understand? And so this is where we're coming from tonight. So where do I start? Where do I start? So let me start with this. Wednesday, I had a meeting with someone. This was a meeting that it was like rescheduled a couple of times. Random things was rescheduled. And so when I tell you Wednesday I was exhausted, I think the night before, did I have a class? I don't know. I was exhausted. I could not get up, and I texted my daughter and I said, I'm not going to go to my appointment. It's an hour and a half drive. I just can't do it. I'm exhausted. And I texted her, put the phone down, and my spirit was like, get up, get up. Success requires discipline. Success in anything requires discipline. You're going to let your body cancel this again? There's something there. And I said, let me get up. When I tell you I rolled out of the bed, got myself dressed, 20 minutes, called an Uber because I was too tired to drive. Called an Uber, paid $97, y'all, to go to this meeting. And when I tell you, so I'm gonna give you some information, not too much about what happened. So I go to this meeting and I met with a woman. I never met her before, but I scheduled this with her. She's technically a biologist. She's a doctor. She's a biologist. And when we first started speaking, she was talking about genetics. And so I was sharing some stuff with her. And she says, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a professor by trade. And then she says, where did you go to school? So I said, I went to Rutgers University. And her eyes lit up. And she said that she went to another particular university. And I was like, and then she went to school. She's a little bit older than me. So she was in like medical school when I was in undergraduate school. So like we probably crossed paths. So now we're having this whole conversation. Listen, because now she's excited. She's like, I knew you weren't from here. So we're having this whole conversation. And she's talking about, listen, oh my gosh, y'all. She says to me that she has really good friends who are vets. And she says, I don't want nobody getting offended. And she says she finds that her veterinarian doctor friends have more knowledge than her medical doctor friends. And she says the reason why is because they study genetics. And I said, well, you didn't study genetics? Listen, I'm gonna put some pieces together. And she says, well, she said, well, I studied it, but in 1998, so let's back up. Before 1998, so in order for you to be a doctor, you can be a medical doctor, or you can get more degrees. You can be PhD, etc. Medical doctor, it's like 4 years. PhD is like an additional year of research, right, and presentation. But medical doctors, in order to get an MD, you had to take a core requirement of genetics. Well, duh, that's like studying architecture and not taking geometry. Do you understand? That's like studying music and not knowing the scales. Do you understand? That's like learning how to be a plumber and not knowing the different types of pipes there are. I don't know. What do you mean? She said, not until a couple of years ago, medical doctors did not have to take genetics. And I said, that doesn't make sense. They're dealing with killing the human body. And she says, I know. And so we begin having this conversation about genetics. So I said, well, that's interesting. Because when I went to college, my major was physics. And what I wanted to study wasn't a major yet. She said, what is your major? And I said, well, I created my own major, right? But I wanted to study what we now know as quantum physics. It did not exist back in the 1990s. Listen. In the late 1990s, there was an international group of biologists got together and they started the Human Genome Project. I'm telling you stuff that you may not know. Listen to this. They got together and they created this program called the Human Genome Project, GENOME. And their goal was to map human DNA. Follow me, y'all. And so in 2003, they said, aha, we've done it. We have decoded human DNA. We have found the codes, and we now understand human DNA. We are the best. Okay? It's done. DNA research is done. We have mastered it. That is it. But listen, y'all, listen.
Check it out.
They were right. They did decode what was codable. Listen to me. Because you're not taught about you. You're not taught about your body. You're not taught about who you are as a spiritual being. This is who this message is for. They decoded 2% of human DNA. Why 2%? Why only 2%? Professor, you said that they did the whole, they decoded it. They found the codes for DNA. What do you mean just 2%? Because 98% is uncodable. What do you mean 98% of human DNA is uncodable?
Check it out.
98% of human DNA, they cannot test it. They cannot capture it because it is not tangible. They can't see it. Listen, 98% of human DNA is quantum. Now, remember I told you at the time, there was no such thing as quantum physics. It wasn't a thing, y'all. I went to school to study it. It didn't exist. It was regular physics. We were studying planets, the space between the planets and distance and energy. We were studying that. But beyond that, there wasn't a field. Epigenetics wasn't a field because they had fit genetics. The medical school said no more genetic classes. So I'm trying to be careful on what I say here. I'm trying to be careful on what I say. 90% of human DNA is uncodable because it is spiritual. It is ancestral. It is galactic. A couple of years ago, I spoke on mitochondrial DNA, and I broke it down how it's traced through the mother and how you trace your genetic line through the mother lineage, through your DNA, through the mitochondrial DNA, right? Some of you may have seen that video, okay? 98% is not, they don't know what, so they call it junk DNA. How the hell you call something junk? Not even like, I can understand if they coded 98% and they couldn't figure out 2% and called 2% DNA, but they called the 98% junk. Listen. So I'm gonna try to stay on track, and I'm gonna try to.
So anybody know what mitochondria is? DNA, mitochondria. Anybody know that? Heard that word before?
Yes, sir. It's DNA that's outside of the nucleus. It's only in the mitochondria, nowhere else.
Right. Mitochondria means it's where a woman can have, she don't have a seed. The man had a seed. So they can't produce. The way the creator made it was the man, the male. So when they, like I was saying before, when he say seed, he's talking about a male. The male had a seed. The seed is synonymous with son. That's what that is. That's Hebrew. So she just, now look where she going. Well, like I said, if you don't understand a lot of these things, you know how many women probably sucked into this, but watch this.
To give you the pieces of all this. At the same time,
check it out.
At the same time, so we're talking about between 1998 2003. At the same time, if you were around then, you noticed the same thing I noticed. So I remember I was a junior. I was a junior on campus, and I had a friend, and she pulled up. It was called Buggy Eye Benz, like this Benz. It was like this nice Mercedes Benz. It was like she had money. Like, I don't understand. You were just in class last month. Like, where you get all this money from? She had a suit on, and she was like, "Girl, you need to leave Rutgers. You need to drop out and make this money." And so I'm like, "What you doing, right? Like, what you doing?" And she was like, "I work for a pharmaceutical company." And I said, "Doing what? Like, how you like?" you make all this money working for a pharmaceutical company. She was making like $60-something thousand a year. Now, nowadays, that's not a lot, but back then, that's like making $200,000, okay? That was a lot of money, okay? So I said, well, what are you doing? And she says, I just go to doctor's offices and share these medicines with them, these prescriptions with them, and I get paid. And we go out to eat, and it's just like the life. And one by one, I started seeing other girls leaving college and working for these pharmaceutical companies. Now, listen,
check it out.
if you're familiar with Rutgers University, there's a main street called George Street, right? I haven't gone to that street in a long time. I think it's George Street. On the street is the headquarters of Johnson & Johnson. It's nothing to do with Rutgers, but the main building, the old brick building, Johnson & Johnson is there. And many of the students were going to work for this pharmaceutical company. Follow me. At this time on television, some of y'all remember this, we started seeing commercials. I don't know. What's the drug that people take? Let's say, I don't know, Valtrex. What is Valtrex? And it would be these lovely people on bikes and having fun. And it's like, take this medicine. And at the bottom, you would hear like, this medicine may induce trauma, it may cause suicidal thoughts, it may result in death, like all these bad things. But these people were so happy. It was the oddest thing for us because it's like, what are these commercials? It was weird. Now it's more common, but back then, they didn't advertise pharmaceutical drugs on TV. That's odd, okay? Ask your doctor about this drug today, right? Weird shit. All this was happening the same period of time, y'all. The medical doctors are no longer studying genetics, okay? They believe that they have covered the whole human genome. They know they didn't. Only 2% was coded. The other one they can't code. Listen. All these pharmaceutical drugs are coming out, and guess what else became popular? Guess what else became popular? What's it called? Do y'all remember? I'm going to go back. Maury Povich, some of these talk shows with finding out who the baby father was, Judge Judy, and the DNA test. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember that when that came out? All of a sudden, there are these DNA tests. People started to hear about DNA tests. That was not a thing before this time. So DNA tests not only could tell if you were the father, you are the father, right? People started to hear it more. And then this wonderful thing happened called with 23andMe DNA, 23andMe DNA, Ancestry DNA, and you have all these people that have been disenfranchised, especially in the Americas, especially in the United States, let me be specific. Black Americans who do not know their lineage past their grandmother or great-grandmother, wanting to find out where they are from in Africa. Listen, I had a cousin that did one of these tests. I knew that something was off because I know the history of all this stuff. And I had a cousin that did this test. And it came back that he was like 98% Nigerian. And I was like, now how are you 98% Nigerian and our grandmother is a whole Aniwaya? She's whole Cherokee. How is that possible? Something is off with these tests. You're my cousin. I know what our bloodline is on this side. That's not right. Listen. So people were willingly giving up their DNA, right? Because you want to find out who your ancestry is. We didn't find out until last year that they said it was stolen or it was sold. The DNA is being sold. All right. Now let me backtrack. Let me backtrack on the audacity. Let me tell y'all some more history. I'm gonna bring it together, y'all. Back in the mid, 50s, 60s, and I spoke about this. There's a video I did that says they're lying. I think it's called "They're Lying to Us." I did it, I think in May, and I gave a history on education in certain things. But back in the actually before that, we're talking about the 1920s. Really, only the elite knew about this back in the 1920s, but it starts to become popular in the 1950s and 60s, where they said, where you have these spiritualists that were saying that there's going to be a group of babies that are going to be born. Listen, and they're going to be gifted. And they were channeling, saying they were going to come from places not of Earth. Orion,
Fallen angels.
Sirius, Pleiades, Lyria, Mu. Okay? And they were going to be very gifted and very powerful.
Check it out. Check it out.
Listen. And they said they were going to be born in early 70s to late 70s. The government knew about this from the early 1900s because you had channelers like Edgar Casey that was telling the president this. Now, when beings that are from here, okay, know that beings that are more powerful are coming here, it's a problem. We know about the Space Force now, but trust that this is not anything new. Trust, this is not anything new. And that the technology that is in this 3D reality is nothing compared to technology that is from other planetary places. So listen, what they started doing to children, what they started doing is telling the teachers, if you have a child that is odd, different, unusually active, hyperactive, or very intelligent, or doodling, anything not normal, test them. We want to test them. And so they started pulling kids out of classes to test them. I'm not saying they are tested for A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. I'm saying the tests were odd, y'all. And I know this because I was one of them. Testing for sounds to hear certain frequencies, looking at symbols and being asked, do you know what this means? Okay? Very odd physical tests. A lot of different tests were happening. Many of the children were then put into another program. You've seen these things on TV, on movies. This was real, y'all. This really happened. This is not made up. Marvel is not making this up, okay? This really happened. This is not fantasy TV movies. This really happened. Some of these kids went to these programs and were messed up. Geniuses ended up on crack because they drugged them. Listen, they drugged them, and when they turned 18, something happened, and we're going to get to that. Well, I'll tell you now. When they turn 18, oh, we can't give you the drugs anymore. But what you going to do? You end up on crack cocaine or heroin because you need something, because the drugs they gave you was so strong. The drugs they were giving them were psychedelics. Y'all, listen.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna stop it right there. But if you want to watch all of that, it's the channel is Professor Melanie, and the name of the video is the Great Genetic Cover-Up. Okay, so when you listen to that and you have the right knowledge, they're looking for angelic DNA. They're looking for traces of what the 200 angels when they came down, the angelic DNA. When I heard that, that's the first thing I thought about. Anybody else got any feedback on that? What you think?
Shalom. Yeah, I'm gonna continue to listen to it. I've been listening to it earlier, and also when it was mentioned about the seed, and as you explained that the woman does not have the seed, and only the male has a seed, and so I got to thinking about it because they said in Genesis chapter 3 verse 15, and it was speaking on. I'll read it. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So in the Hebrew word of seed means modern day sperm, correct? A woman does not have sperm, and that's the seed. The woman has the egg. So when it reads this here, on chapter 3, verse 15 in Genesis, what seed is he speaking on? The child that's in her egg. That child is within her from having relations with a male. Now, speaking of a baby versus saying her baby versus saying her seed, or is that something different?
It ain't but one seed. That's the male has it. It's the semen. It's this. It's the semen.
Yes, sir. So in verse 15 of chapter 3 in Genesis, praising this word, her seed, that's what I'm going at. Is that being the baby, not versus saying a seed like a male seed, but her seed would be the baby?
Right. She don't have. She can't have a baby. So that's how you know they tamper with it. So then you go to the New Testament, and then you say, which is an abomination. How did she get the seed? Because that verse you're reading, they saying that's in the future when JC came. JC was the seed that the woman was gonna have later on. He died for the whole world. That's the seed they saying, and that's the reason they had to change it because of Mary was conceived by angel by Gabriel overshadowing her.
Isn't Gabriel one of the archangels?
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. When you have the right knowledge, you see how crazy that is.
Correct.
We know that a woman don't have mitochondria. So it's no way that verse said that. It's Adam's seed. Adam brought the seed. It's Adam's seed. And the crazy part about it is, when you read in the scriptures, it says Adam knew his wife, and she conceived. It's already tell you right there who got the seed.
Yes, sir.
Then they come back and they put in that it's her seed. Like I said, they just wrote it. And you got highly educated Negroes falling for that. It's obvious that all through the scriptures is showing you that the male is the one that brings forth the seed, the one that has the seed.
Yes, sir.
We see where he said where Isaac went into Rebecca and she conceived because Isaac went into her, she conceived. That's the only way she can have a seed. And then now all of a sudden, this one precept. Now all of a sudden, the seed belonged to Eve, and that's a problem. And that was a setup for JC, because JC, because of the woman, she conceived without a man, it's her seed, and that was the way they set it up in Genesis 13, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Right.
sir. Because when they mentioned Mary was a virgin, in the Hebrew language, virgin does not mean not having intercourse.
Right. It's a woman of married age.
Yes, sir. So as we break this down, it's a whole lot of hoodwinking going on.
Right. Exactly. Like we was talking about last night with the that Moses was going to raise up a prophet like unto Moses. They took that and they said that's Jesus. But we read last night, we saw that he told him go out and lay hands on Joshua. Joshua was the prophet. Then Moses he laid hands on, not Jesus. So and that's the prime example of what I mean by typology. It's an art, and they use it in the New Testament. They use it to combine the New Testament to the Old Testament.
Yes. So if they could trace the DNA of JC, they would know that he was not like they say, an angel came down and
Right,
gave it to, they would know his real parents in their lineage if they
right,
could do the DNA of him. Okay.
right. And that's an abomination when you go back to. That's the reason why the book of Enoch is not in the scriptures. It's because these 200 angels came down and slept with women. That was abomination. Now you come to the New Testament and you got Gabriel overshadowing Mary. So that's an abomination. So yeah, so that's why they like I said, we've been brainwashed hoodwinked all over the place. But back to the video right here, like what she just said, they looking for these supernatural characteristics in humans. No, that's them looking for the characteristics and the genetics from the fallen angels from way back when they slept with the women. That's what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
When you rightly divide it. Like you said, in the Marvel movies, that's the whole purpose of these Marvel movies. They're saying that they was going around looking for kids with supernatural abilities, and they'd take them to this little place, and they end up making them superheroes. So that's angelic DNA. It ain't got nothing to do with Yahweh.
Shalom. Like you were saying before, like you mentioned, if you like, take a chair and sit down on the side and watch the cars go by and you can see.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. That's the side effects of angel sleeping with a human. Those defects. That's why all through the scriptures, the Creator is telling us not to mingle with them. So there's no way under the sun he came and later and drafted them in, like the New Testament said. All that's abomination. It's crazy. But you have to have that. You have to have that understanding, that knowledge to see that. Right. Anybody else?
Shalom, Brother Leonard. Shalom, everyone. Excuse me again this Thursday for not doing Women's Health. My laptop totally locked up on me right before class, so I'm in on my phone, which I don't like to be, but I'm here. So, Brother Leonard, the first thing I thought about, when I was listening to the video, right? She just
Right.
kept harping on the mother, like
Right.
for
Right.
instance, when the guy went and done his DNA testing and said where he was from in Africa, she said, how could that be when our mother is from,
Yeah.
this, you know what I'm saying? So,
Right. Right.
and then the first thing I thought about, I could not think of the movie that the Wolverine was in, when all
Right.
those kids was in that special school and they had all those special abilities.
Right.
That is sort of what I thought about. And as we read throughout the scripture, understanding the curse about Cain, we know that was a wicked seed. And the same thing with Rebecca. It was a wicked seed, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
he told Eve that he was going to greatly multiply her sorrow, right? And the same thing with Rebecca when she was asking all the other women, hey, is anybody, experiencing all these, problems, struggles, with their pregnancy? So we know that both of those struggles, there was a wicked seed that came from that, right? But
Right.
in the book of Jasher, it tells us, he told Abraham that he was going to multiply his seed. So, like you have always explained to us, when they talk about the woman like that, that's not Hebrew.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
because we know that the male is the seed, but sometimes we listen to things. So when you don't have a great foundation, you misunderstand what is being said and not being able to rightly divide what you're hearing. And they want us to believe again that this thing about worshiping the woman.
Right. You get sucked into that. But if you have the right understanding of it, you can see that it don't add up. Right.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Let me hold on a minute. Yeah. Okay. Now here we go. So anybody else got any comments on that? Okay.
Yes, sir. Shalom. I felt like she said some things in that video that had some truth to them. Just the DNA part that you did play. Just suddenly all of this medicine being advertised on TV. You know, I lived through the time where I only heard Band-Aids and Flintstone vitamins on TV, and then all of a sudden, and it's normal now, there was just a flood of all this horrible stuff that happens. But like she said, there's all these people happily skipping through. I will say I had two thoughts going on. I watched majority of the video. One was the main one I had actually, Brother Leonard, was putting that in perspectives of Hebrew Israelites, the testing being done on them. I remember growing up, I personally, my family, all my siblings and I were actually not supposed to watch Ricky Lake and all those other things, Mari, but we'd watch it because we were babysitting ourselves when we got old enough. And I remember seeing too many black males on that show. So that's what came to mind when she was actually talking. That yes, while there's people looking for basically the seed from the Nephilim, that there still are people trying to understand. And she never said what group of people. But it's clear, like you said, Brother Leonard, what group she was talking about. I was thinking about the Hebrew Israelites and the fact that there are groups out there still trying to seek to destroy, regardless of what the prophecy is. And so that came to my mind while I was watching the video also.
Okay. Yeah. So so it's like I said, when you get a proper foundation, you can rightly divide a lot of those things. It's like they always do. They got some truths intermingled in there with it, but the main thing is to negate you, send you out down another road. Is what that main objective is. So yeah. So with that being said, we're gonna go to the Apocrypha, and we're gonna read the story of Susanna, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll pick a scripture out, break the scripture down, and we'll close out. Okay. So I'm in the Apocrypha, dealing with the story of Susanna, right? It says, there once lived in Babylon a man named Joachim. He married a wife named Susanna, daughter of Hilkiah. So notice, like I told you about, she's the daughter of Hilkiah. So who is Hilkiah? Hilkiah is the one that found the book of the law in the bottom of during the time of Josiah. They had the law. They had put the book of the law away, and high priest Hilkiah found it. So Susanna is his daughter, a very beautiful and pious woman. Her parents also were upright people and instructed their daughter in the law of Moses. Jehoiakim was very rich, and he had a fine garden adjoining his house. And the Jews used to come to visit him because he was the most distinguished of them all. That year, 2 of the elders of the people were appointed judges, men of the kind of whom the Lord said, lawlessness came forth from Babylon, from elders who were judges, who were supported to guide the people. These men came constantly to Joachim's house, and all who had cases to be decided came to them there. And it happened that when the people left at midday, Susanna would go into her husband's garden and walk about. So the 2 elders saw her every day as she went in and walked about, and they conceived a passion for her. So their thoughts were perverted, and they turned away their eyes so as not to look up to heaven to consider justice and giving judgment. They were both smitten with her. But they could not disclose their pain of each other, for they were ashamed to reveal their passion. for they desired to have relations with her, and they watched jealously every day for the sight of her. And they said to one another, let us go home, for it is dinner time. So they went out of the garden and parted one another, and then they turned back and encountered one another. And when they cross-questioned one another as to the explanation, they admitted their passion. Then they agreed together upon a time when they would be able to find her alone. Okay. Now it happened as they were watching for the opportunity that she went in one day as usual with no one but her two maids and wished to bathe in the garden as it was very hot. And there was no one there except the two elders who had hidden themselves and were watching her. And she said to her maids, bring me olive oil and soap and close the doors of the garden so that I can bathe. And they did as she told them and shut the doors of the garden and went out at the side doors to bring what they had been ordered to bring. And they did not see the elders, for they were hidden. And when the maids were out, the two elders got up and ran to her and said, here, the doors of the garden are shut, and no one can see us, and we are in love with you. So give your consent and lie with us. If you do not, we will testify against you that there was a young man with you, and that was why you dismissed your maids. And Susanna groaned and said, I am in a tight spot, for I do this. For if I do this, it means my death. But if I refuse, I cannot escape your hands. I had rather not do it and fall into the hands that commit sin in the Lord's sight. Then Susanna gave a loud scream, and the two elders shouted against her, and one of them ran and opened the garden doors. And when the people in the house heard the shouting in the garden, they rushed through the side doors to see what had happened to her. And when the elders told their story, her slaves were deeply humiliated, for such a thing had never been said about Susanna. The next day, when the people came together to her husband, Joachim, the two elders came, full of their wicked design to put Susanna to death. And they said before the people, send for Susanna, the daughter of Hilkiah, Joachim's wife. And they did so. And she came with her parents and her children and all her relatives. Now Susanna was accustomed to luxury and was very beautiful. And the lawbreakers ordered her to be unveiled, for she was wearing a veil, so that they might have their fill of her beauty. And the people with her and all who saw her wept. And the two elders stood up in the midst of the people and laid their hands on her head, and she wept and looked up to heaven, for her heart trusted in the Lord. And the elders said, as we was by walking by ourselves in the garden, this woman came in with two maids and shut the doors of the garden and dismissed her maids. And the young man who had been hidden came to her and lay down with her, and we were in the corner of the garden. And when we saw this wicked action, we ran up to them, and though we saw them together, we could not hold him, because he was stronger than we, and opened the doors and rushed out. But we laid hold of this woman and asked her who the young man was, and she would not tell us. This is our testimony. Then the assembly believed them, as they were elders of the people and the judges, and they condemned her to death. But Susanna uttered a loud cry and said, eternal God, you who knows what is hidden, who know all things before they happen, you know that what we have testified, what they have testified to against me is false. And here I am to die when I have done none of the things they have so wickedly charged me with. And the Lord heard her cry, and as she was being led away to be put to death, God stirred up the Holy Spirit of a young man named Daniel, and he loudly shouted, I am clear of the blood of this woman. And all the people turned to him and said, okay, what does this mean that you have said? And he took his stand in the midst of them and said, are you such fools, you Israelites, that you have condemned the daughter of Israel without examination or ascertaining of the truth? Go back to the place of the trial, for these men have borne false witness against her. So all the people hurried back, and the elders said to him, come, sit among us and inform us, for God has given you the right to do so. And Daniel said to them, separate them widely from one another, and I will examine them. And when they were separated from each other, he called one of them to him and said to him, you ancient of wicked days, how your sin have overtaken you, that you committed before, making unjust decisions, condemning an innocent and acquitting the guilty. Although the Lord said, you shall not put an innocent and upright man to death. So now, if you saw this woman, tell us under which tree did you see them meet? And he answered, under a mastic tree. And Daniel said, you have told a fine lie against your own life, for altogether already the angel of God has received the sentence from God, and he will cut you in two. And he had him removed and ordered them to bring in the other. And he said to him, you descendant of Canaan and not of Judah, beauty has beguiled you, and desire has corrupted your heart. This is how you have been treating the daughters of Israel, and they yielded to you through fear. But the daughter of Judah would not endure your wickedness. So now tell me, under which tree did you catch them embracing each other? And he said, under a live oak tree. And Daniel said to him, you have also told a fine lie against your own life, for the angel of the Lord is waiting with his sword to show you in, to saw you in two, to destroy you both. And the whole company uttered a great shout and blessed God, who saves those who hope in him. And they threw themselves upon the two elders, for Daniel had convicted them out of their own mouths of having borne false witness, and treated them as they had wickedly planned to treat their neighbor. They obeyed the law of Moses and killed them, and innocent blood was saved that day. And Hilkiah and his wife praised God for their daughter Susanna. So did Jotham, her husband, and all her relatives, because she had done nothing immodest. And from that day onward, Daniel had a great reputation in the eyes of the people. Okay. Anybody have any comments on that?
Yes, sir.
Anybody heard that story before?
Yes, sir. Shalom.
Yes.
Okay.
I had heard that story before, and just from our recent class, what stood out to me was at the end, verse 62, and according to Moses, the law of Moses anyway, they did as they were supposed to do, which is put them to death. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the thing about it is that, like I said, so many people, you got these so-called Christians think they say they have a zeal for the Most High, the Lord of hosts. It's now that we're in these last days, and the Lord of hosts is uncovering the truth. So they would say, oh yeah, it's some untruths in the Bible. There's very few, but it's not, it's some in there. They gotta admit that, not understanding that it's huge, the lies that they told. So right there, like I said before, that's out of the book of Daniel. They only have 12 chapters in the book of Daniel. So this right here is before Daniel chapter 1. So this go in the book of Daniel. So you got Jeremiah with, I think, 50-some chapters, and Isaiah with 66 chapters. The book of Daniel got just as many chapters, but they take them out. So that's Daniel before he went to Babylon. The young man. He's a young man, wise young man. The spirit of, just like Joseph, had the spirit of God on him. So what happened with him and Susanna was before Nebuchadnezzar came and took him away to Babylon. Says that Nebuchadnezzar said, give him the wise. He wanted some of the wise men of Judea. The first, he came 3 times, but the first time he came, he took a bunch of the youth back with him, wise men, wise young men. Daniel was one of them. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that's the 4 of them. Those are the wise men he took with him back to Babylon. So this is before Daniel 1 and 1. And then we know Daniel was also the Bell and the Dragon. That's out of the book of Daniel. That happened before Daniel went to Babylon. Well, it happened when Daniel first went to Babylon. He exposed these wicked people, or they was sucking the king of his wealth by eating up all the food that they was supposedly giving to the god of the god of the Babylonians, but they was eating the food. So, like I said before, all this is out of the book of Daniel. So there's no way under the sun that Daniel only had 12 chapters. Okay.
Yes, sir.
But
Before I read, and thankfully they have Daniel's name in here, but before I read the Apocrypha, I always thought it was just books missing, but it was an eye opener to see Daniel's name and other things where it's clear that the canon that was made, the Holy Bible as we call it, that you knew his name was another text, and that as a group, people decided, let's just pull that out. I mean, that's just clear evidence that they decided what would be presented to the masses and what would not be.
Right. And like I said before, Bell and the Dragon and Susanna was before, at the beginning of the book of Daniel. And then when you go to what happened with Antiochus, Epiphanes, that's in the book of Daniel. They took all that out and they got it over here in Revelations saying that it's going to happen in the future. But Daniel, all that was in the book of Daniel, Daniel prophesied about all that, because right after that, like I was saying, I don't know if people it registered or not, but in Daniel 9:25, which is, I'm always shining a light on that, but the next verse, 26, says that Messiah, which is Zerubbabel, is going to come back, and then the people of the prince that shall come after him. That's Antiochus Epiphanes. So they had to be in there too. Daniel prophesied all that. But they took it and put it over in the New Testament and attached to JC, to the end times. All that's out of Daniel. Okay?
Shalom.
So anybody else got anything on that?
Shalom. I have the Bible Gateway, and if you go in there, Daniel has 14 chapters, and also in the book of the Gateway Bible, it has the Maccabees in Maccabees 1 and 2. So that's a reference book, the Gateway Bible.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So we got 14 chapters. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna check that out, because I'm gonna check that out and see what those 2 chapters what they say. Okay.
Shalom,
Yeah.
everyone. I have one thing. One of the things that I noticed too is that the Lord of Hosts made Daniel a judge at that time because he allowed him to judge the guys, those two elders, which were
Right.
much older than him, because he was wise, and to see them lie before the honest woman, um, that they were that the man had been there. They had been lustful all the days anyway. You could tell for them saying that they have always, lust after her. So they've been doing this for quite some time. Shalom.
Right. Yeah, and another thing that was revealed in that book of Susanna, like I was saying, people can't famine it, but one of those, what Daniel told him, he was a Canaanite. He said, you're not no man, you're not a man of the Lord that made you a judge, but you ain't no man of you're not an Israelite. He's a Canaanite. Let me look at that real quick. Like I said, a lot of people read over that, but let me get it. So he says at the end, so he says, let me start at verse 55. You have told a fine lie also against your own life. Already the angel of God received sentence from God, and he will cut you in two. And he said, and he had him removed and ordered them to bring in the other. And he said to him, you descendant of Canaan. See that? You descendant of Canaan. He ain't no Israelite.
Yes, sir.
You descendant of Canaan and not of Judah. Beauty has beguiled you, and desire has corrupted your heart. So when you look at that, like I said before, they didn't tell you the whole story, but when they was bringing out the Israelite women over here, and we see them all the time on these slave stories, they showing them the white man packing up all this stuff, getting in a wagon, going to meet one of these ships, coming in, full of all these Hebrew women. You see it on the movie Mandingo, 12 Years a Slave. Same thing right here. They hadn't seen those type of women. Okay? Yeah. So anybody got a scripture they want to shine a light on? We're going to read it and break it down before we close out.
Yes, sir. I like to go to the fourth chapter of Maccabees, and 3. It kind of coincides with what we just read out of Susanna. Um, so Maccabees 4, chapter 3. The argument is exceedingly ridiculous, for reason does not appear to bear sway over its own affections, but over those of the body, in such a way as that any one of you may not be able to root out desire, but reasoning will enable you to avoid being enslaved to it. One may not be able to root out anger from the soul, but it is possible to withstand anger. Any one of you may not be able to eradicate malice, but reasoning has force to work with you to prevent you yielding to malice. For reasoning is not an eradicator, but an antagonist of the passions, and this may be more clearly comprehended from the thirst of King David. For after David he had been attacking the Philistines the whole day, he with his soldiers and the nation killed many of them. Then when evening came, sweating and very weary, he came to the royal tent around which the entire army of the ancestors was encamped. Now all of the rest of them were at supper, but the king, being very much thirsty, although he had numerous springs, could not by their means quench his thirst. But a certain irrational longing for the water of the enemy's camp grew stronger and fiercer on him and consumed him with lavish. For that reason, his bodyguards, being troubled at this longing of the king, 2 valiant young soldiers, reversing the desire of the king, put in their armor and taking a pitcher, got over the ramparts of the enemy and up perceived by the guardians of the gate. They went throughout the whole camp of the enemy in quest, and having boldly desired the fountain, they filled out of it in the drought for the king. But he that parched with thirst reasoned that a drought regarded of equal value to blood would be terribly dangerous to his soul. And pretty much they, going back to Susanna, they, thirsting for something that could cost them their life, which it did for the two elders, Canaanites. Shalom.
What that was that? You just read?
Maccabees, the 4th chapter. I'm at the 4 Maccabees, chapter 3.
Right. Right. Yeah. You know what that's referencing, right? That's referencing in 2 Samuel when David
with his took the life of the guy for the woman.
No. When David
Okay.
when David was pinned down and he was thirsty for water and he longed for the water in Jerusalem. And
Oh yeah.
those two of his mighty men killed a whole bunch of men just for him to get that water. So
yes, sir.
So he got reprimanded for that. So David wouldn't drink the water. He pulled it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay. Right. Okay. So with that being said, I'm gonna say shalom to everybody. We got our men's event Bible study tomorrow night, so the women can come into YouTube. So I'll see everybody tomorrow. Shalom, and another shalom.
Shalom, everyone.